Okay, so here it is. It's a new show. New show alert, new show alert. This is Lovecraft Country. Hey guys, thanks so much for clicking on the video. This is my review for Lovecraft Country. This is season 1, episode 1. Listen, I knew as soon as I seen Lovecraft, I don't know but one Lovecraft, and that's HP Lovecraft. I said, I'm in. I am in, I'm in, I'm in. And then I seen Journey Smollett. I was like, oh yeah, because this is right up her alley. Right up her alley. But anyway, let me tell you, let's just go into this. Horror movie fans and sci-fi fans know H.P. Lovecraft. I'm not a big sci-fi person, but HP is right there. Like he plays that game and twists that thing that he can make space stuff cool. Because when it starts dealing with space, I'm usually like, I'm out. I don't want to be bothered. But he can make it cool. But anyway, so Lovecraft Country. It starts off and it looks like a period piece, basically, is what it looks like. Everything is set back in the day. We are literally right at segregation. Okay, we're right at segregation. We're traveling. We got this guy. His name is Tick. And Tick is actually leaving from Kentucky, is where we see him on the bus coming from Kentucky. They're leaving Kentucky, and he's headed towards Chicago. Okay. We found out later that he was in South Korea in the service, and he's making his way back to Chicago. But anyway, the tire goes out on the bus. So right away we see on the bus that it's blacks in the back, Caucasian folk in the front, and it's actually written in the bus. This is where I was like, oh, period piece. Okay, and then you can tell from the clothing and different things like that where we were. But the tire goes out on the bus. So I was like, oh, this is getting us into the mood of this. We're going to see a lot of this stuff. This whole prejudice, racist stuff. So just get ready because there's going to be a lot of this infiltrated into this, okay? But it makes it interesting. It makes it interesting. There's been a new surge of putting horror into the African American. It always, African Americans in horror movies never worked because we just kind of didn't fit. And that's because when it comes to us being afraid and different things like that, we are different than our Caucasian counterparts. We just are. That's one of the things that we do kind of different. Different things scare us than that scare our Caucasian counterparts. That's just a difference. A lot of things about us, you say, oh, it's just worldwide. Music is worldwide. We all love music and stuff like that. Yes. But when it comes to body composition, we are different. When it comes to the things that scare us, we are different. Family values and the values and the way that we solve certain issues, family-wise, there is an actual difference. It just is what it is. It don't have nothing to do with being racist or anything like that. Those are things that I could think of right away. There are differences, even down to religion and how we handle religion. It's different. So that's that. So that adds another layer to this. So right away, this is very, very interesting. It's very interesting. And the way that they're actually putting these things in lately in these different things. Jordan Peele is a big part of that shift of black people being in horror movies because we usually are the first to go. You know, because we're different. We just do things different. Where everybody, you know, there's a noise in the basement. Black folks ain't going to the basement. If there's a noise in the basement, we're leaving. We ain't even going upstairs. We leaving. So we don't make for a good horror movie. That's just kind of the way it is. But anyway, so anyhow, Tick actually has a little thing for sci-fi and like little horror thing. Like he has a little thing for it. Okay, he was having this dream when he very first opened up, and it was like a war story. It was a war story, but then it had aliens in it, and I was like, okay, so that was kind of. He wakes up as a dream sequence. Let me see how his mind kind of works. He's all over the place. So it's like, oh, okay, cool. You're very creative and very open. So that was cool. So there's just him and one other black woman on the bus. The bus breaks down, and then there's like a truck comes in from the closest town, and the truck picks up the folks. They said, this is our way, folks, of going on in the town. And they kind of came and they looked, and they took everybody except for him and the black woman. They literally left them on the side of the road, and they were walking into the next town. Horrible. But that was the beginning of the story. That told you where we were and how things just were at that time. And it was deep like that. So this is what we got going on. He's ended up telling the woman, you know, he's on his way back to Chicago. And the reason being is that his father has gone missing. Okay. So a lot of stuff goes on. I'm not going to peel you all through all of that. He comes in, you start seeing like, he goes to his uncle's house, his uncle, and the uncle and the wife. The uncle does some traveling with his work. He's a photographer and a writer, like a journalist, and his wife is a writer as well. But he pretty much pushes and keeps her at home. But she has this thing, she wants to go out and stuff. But again, it's, you know, this is not the time. And he had said that to her, something about, you know, traveling and a woman and this, that, and the other thing. And I agree. It just was not the time for it. So we have that going on. But he goes to their house. There's a little girl, which is his little cousin. She's there. She's a little artist. And she does art, and she does like, it looked like she's like trying to create comic books and things of that nature. She draws real good. But I was looking at what she was drawing and different things. Their whole family got like a taste for horror sci-fi kind of thing, because it was like like she had like witches, just different things that you wouldn't see a little girl. Because she had to be about 10 or 11, you know, doing. I was like, okay, very interesting little stuff she was drawing, real interesting. So we noticed that. I noticed there's HP LoveCraft books around, so they're fans of the work of HP LoveCraft. So that was, I'm like, okay, so what is that all about? Like, okay, whatever. And then he starts talking about this letter. His father had sent him this letter, and the letter had said something about Arkham, which I was like, that's Batman. That's a Batman reference. But I'm like, that would be too far back for it to be a Batman reference. It was a writing. He's reading it as Arkham, but it wasn't. As Artem is what it is in the letter. Because his uncle looks at it and says, no, this says Artem. It's the handwriting. It's Artem. I said, okay. And the letter babbles something about a birthright and something else like that. And it's like really, really weird. And his father was wanting him to come to him, and said he was looking for the mother's, like the mother's background and the mother's lineage and all of this, and kept speaking about this birthright. It was a bunch of mumbo jumbo, okay? So what I got is that the mother wasn't in the picture. He was raised by the father. The mother kind of like went, and he don't know where she went, so he going looking for her. He wanted the son to come home to find out, to go with him. We found out later that the father never even wanted him to go to the service. or to leave. So that was a whole another little issue. That was another layer. There's a lot of layers to this. Anyway, so as all this is going on, he's like back in town, and he's different than when he left. Because when he left, he was like this little nerd, because he's very, very smart and used to wear glasses. But now he got this body, and you know how it looks when you come back from out of jail or you come back from the service, baby. It's like, oh, who's getting on that money? So it's one of those little things. So then at the same time, there's this girl named Letty. And Letty actually has a sister that lives in Chicago. She's in the town. Letty seems to be more of like this free spirit. She has a sister. The sister really ain't got no time for her. Told her, look, you can stay with me for 2 nights, and then that's it. You're not living off of me, and I just ain't got time to deal with you. And, you know, you can go to our brother. There's a brother that lives a few hours away. Well, quite a few hours away. But I was like, okay, so she's like this free spirit, okay? And what I noticed right away with her, she is fair-skinned. It's the characters played by Journey Smollett. Both her brother and sister are my complexion. So they're darker children, and she's light. And they had a conversation where the sister had said to her, what you think you're going to do? Go. She said, I don't want to work. Like, I ain't clean the houses and stuff. I ain't trying to do all that. And she said, what you think you're going to do? Go downtown and get you one of them jobs in a department store? She's like, yeah. And then I'll be able to, you know, make some money and we could both live good. And the sister was like, girl, get out of here. You can stay with me for 2 days, then get on about your business. I was like, the colorism thing. Again, a good layer to put in there because that is very prevalent. And that time period, it's another layer. Okay. So we got that going on. Now, there was a bar that Tick went to that his father used to hang out at. And the owner, they told him the owner, he's in the back. They said he's back in back. And so he goes out into the child, this is HBO. He goes out into the back. The owner's out there, baby, getting some head from the little sissy. And he's like, you don't see the little guy, you see the owner. And he's like, oh. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. And then you see the little guy back up and then like run down the alley. I said, oh, child, no, you wasn't sampling in the dark arts, honey. And he ran on down. I said, it's all going on, honey. But he ends up telling him that, you know, your dad, last time I seen him, he was here, and there was this real fancy car that came, and he left out with the car and said there was a white man, and he said, and that's the last I seen of him. So later on, when we see Tick go home, because Tick and Letty know each other. You know, they remember each other from when they were kids. And again, she's like, child, you used to be skinny and whatever. So he ends up going to his dad's house. You see where he like punched, there was like a little hole in the wall and different things like that. More H.P. Lovecraft stuff. Other little things that were like, okay, kind of out of place. It's just kind of weird. But he ended up making this phone call. And the phone call was to South Korea. And the person that answered the phone said, Tick, is that you? You went home. You shouldn't have. And hung up. I was like, ooh, that was different and strange. Because again, the H.P. Lovecraft stuff was just kind of weird to be thrown in. And I was just kind of hanging with it. Like, okay, as soon as I see H.P. Lovecraft, I'm like, this is not going to be... It totally looks like a period piece. It looks like a whole movie about just life when we are, you know, life as segregation just is like rolling out everywhere. That's what the movie looks like. And there's just these little pieces thrown in that has the horror genre on top of it. But again, it doesn't fit. So it's just kind of like I'm watching like, yeah, okay, whatever. So next you see them loading up to go. It's the uncle, Letty, and Tick. They're going to find, the uncle's going on to his job, the next job site he has to go to, which is going in the direction that Tick is going to try to find this Artem place. That's not on the map because it's not on the map. Okay. Letty's brother is on the way there, so she gets harassed. So everybody's in there together. So they start traveling. They're going through the Midwest. There was this whole, it's just prejudice. It's just a prejudice lands, okay, period. Then they get to Simmonsville. They take this little shortcut. This is like maybe 2 hours away from Letty's brother's house. They took this little shortcut. They go to Simmonsville. Now, you know, back then they used to have a list of like places that were safe and cool for black folks to actually visit and to eat at, different things like that on the road. So there was a restaurant in Simmonsville, and it had like a woman's name. It was just like a Daisy Mays or whatever. The name was different, but they're like, but this is it. This is where they say it is. So there was, long story short, they go into this diner, and the people were looking real strange. It was just the guy who was working there, and there was this one gentleman that was there that was eating and having coffee or whatever. And they just kind of looked at them like, what are you all doing here, honey? And so the guy leaves out, giving them real strange looks. The cook guy goes to the back of the kitchen, and they're like, well, we could leave. You know, the younger ones, Journey and Letty. Letty and Tick is like, we can leave. And the uncle's like, our money spends here as well. So we're not playing these games. Letty ends up going to the bathroom. She said, I'm going to go to the bathroom. As she goes to the bathroom, she overhears the cook guy on the phone. And he's like, it's three of them, and they this, that, and the other. And they just came in. I promise you, I didn't serve them. Especially after what you did to Miss whatever the woman's name was that used to own the place. He said her name. Next thing you know, shortly after that, Tick and the uncle are talking, and he's looking, and he sees the bricks, and it's all white, like everything's painted white instead of like brick. It was painted white. And it's like, who paints bricks white? And he said to his uncle, remind me again why the White House is white. And he says that it was painted white to cover up the burn marks from when it had been set on fire while it was being built. And he moved a piece of the towel with his shoe, and you could see the wood was burned. And right at that moment, Letty comes out. She's like, let's get our ass out of here. And they run, and they go, and they get in the car. And sure enough, boom, the boys, honey, they just showing up, honey. And it's like a car full of these rednecks, honey, and they got guns. And they literally have this whole chase. They're chasing them out of the town. The good old boys, honey. And they were like and they're shooting at them and carrying on. It was a mess. And then we see this silver Rolls Royce that we saw actually outside of, when I thought back, that Rolls Royce was outside of Tick's father's house that night, the one night that he spent in Chicago. That car was out there. And they were just like trying to get away, and the people were gaining on them, and they were coming down the road, and the silver car was coming down the road, and the silver car ended up in between them. So it was like, and it was Letty, and Letty was driving. Of course, they weren't letting Letty do anything because, you know, she's a girl. But when they did this, they had to hurry up and go, and they were like, Letty was driving, baby. She was rolling. She ended up driving. And she's flying, and that's when we get to see that Letty's a badass chick, okay? But she's driving. The silver car gets in between them. And then, all at once, they're like trying to get it together, and the other ones are shooting, so they're not really looking. Tick seen it. Tick saw what happened. but the silver car literally did this, like hooked in front of the car behind them with the good old boys, and it, like, the car flipped, but it wasn't. It was weird. It was something. It wasn't normal. Like, it wasn't. What should have happened is they should have actually banged into them, but they didn't. It was kind of like there was like sort of like a force field or something that just literally made the car flip. It flipped completely over the silver car and crunched all of their asses, tore their asses up. And then there was this mysterious looking white woman who was sharp as a tack. She was all done up, and she got out, and she was standing there looking, and Tick looked at her, and she looked at Tick, and then they just kept going. Tick seen it happen, but he just kind of like whatever, you know, go. We made it, go. That was that. So they went on to the next town and everything, which is Bradford, which they get there, they're at the brother's house. There was some really heavy conversation going on between Letty and her brother, and he was saying, I sent you money to come home with mama died, and this, that, and the other, and you didn't come, and blah, 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 blah. And it was real hostile. And the uncle told Tick, don't get in it. That's family business. This, that, thing, and the other. They had actually talked about Artem and all of that, and they figured out that it's not on the map, this, that, and the other. And then the brother was actually adding some things. He was like, you know, they have a sheriff there in Bradford that is a former Navy man. There's a lot of NAACP complaints. There's a lot of missing persons. There's been some stuff said about witch hunters, black magic, wild animals, and a lot of just missing persons and stuff. And they said, don't know if it's worse to run into the wild animals or to run into their sheriff. So that was that. While the little conversation was going on inside the house with Letty and the brother, Tick and his uncle was having a conversation. The uncle said, you know, your father, he was upset when you left, but he really did want you to leave. And he said, we haven't spoken. We never spoke after that. Like, they just fell out, you know. And he's like, your father asked every day. He came every day, and he would ask, you know, he would want to know. He wouldn't come out and say it, but he would wait for the conversation of whether you had called or whatever, because he always kept in contact with the uncle. He's like, he loved you, whatever. So he says, you know, your father, when we were growing up, your father was small, a smaller man, and I should have protected him more. And I was like, And then Tick said, and I was smaller as well, and you didn't do a damn thing to protect me either. So whatever happened to the father repeated and did it to Tick. So I'm just going, I don't think it was like a sexual abuse thing. I think he was just like abusive, because remember, there was like holes in the wall. So I think he was abusive, and I think he was abused as a child, and he just did that to Tick as well, especially because he was stuck with him and the mom was gone. So I think they were physically abused as children, and I think that he passed that on, and he did that to Tick. And the uncle, you know, didn't know. I don't think he knew that was actually going on. So anyway, or maybe he just stayed out of it. Anyway, they get on and they go on to this next town, which is Devon County. Well, they're in Devon County. There's all this stuff going on. They're like around and around and around all day in these woods looking. They can't find this place. They can't find this place they're looking for. Artem is not there. Nothing is showing. They're like, maybe it's a road that's covered up or something. So they ended up kind of like stopping. And it's like, it's not a wooded area. Like, there's like wooded area. And they're like, okay, so it's getting close to dusk. And while they're out there talking, the next thing you know, there's the sheriff done pulled up behind them. And he was a jerk. He was a jerk. Told them this is a sundown. They said, you ever heard of a sundown town? And they're like, yeah, we heard of that. Which means basically don't get caught. If you black, don't get caught after sundown in that town because nobody probably will ever see you again. Okay? So he was like boasting about that. He said, this is a sundown county. And told him, you got like 10 minutes to get out of here. You know, this, that, thing, and the other. And he just was just a jerk. So he going to follow them out of town. And he knew, he's like, because I could arrest you. You know, or this, that, and the other. And this, that. Basically threatening to hurt them. Tell them they ain't got no business there. So they was trying to get out of town. And they did that. He made them beg him to be able to do a U-turn. And they're like, okay, so they did the U-turn. He said, okay. He follows them out. And I mean, they're like to the second getting out of the town. Just did make it to the railroad tracks. That's what he's like. He's like, you can't exceed the speed limit or he's going to stop us. He just really put them in a bad position. And as they pass the railroad tracks, as soon as they get down and they get like, whew, we just made it. There's a roadblock. He had already called a reinforcement. So they end up, now there's like 6 cops. And now they take them into the woods and they're going to do them. And it's starting to get dark. Okay? So they end up getting them out there doing this whole race thing. Got them laying on their face, on the ground, with guns to their heads and all of this. And this is when it got very H.P. Lovecraft. And it got very interesting. The sheriff was standing there. And then the next thing you know, something just ripped his goddamn arm off. They heard like some noise. They heard some noise. And something just ripped his arm off. The whole arm just fell on the ground. And it still had the flashlight in the hand. And it fell in front of the uncle. The uncle was like looking like, what the hell? And then you just start seeing the officers just getting beheaded. And they was tore up. Ended up, all it was, they ended up getting up there like, run. The uncle ended up having the flashlight. He laying there on the ground. He's older. He's like my age, basically. And Letty and Tech are running, and they ain't even realize at first that the uncle ain't right behind them. Uncle George, that's his name, Uncle George. So they see this cabin, basically, in the woods. They run into the cabin, and behind them is the sheriff with his one arm, and there's a deputy. So they're running. They get in there. They bang on the door, and they tell them to let them in. And they're like, yeah, right. So they're going to shoot through the door. And they let them in. And they're like, Uncle George, he's like, I had to go back out and get him. They're like, So he's like, I'm going to go get him. So shortly after that, Uncle George comes through. He's coming through. And he said, when he got in there, he made a comment. This one said, they're so in tune with different things. He said something about the children of the night, something, 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 something. He quoted it, and Tick caught it. And he was like, that's H.P. Love. He's like, what is he babbling about this with the sheriff? He said, that's H.P. Lovecraft. It's about vampires. He said, no, nothing bothered me. I had this flashlight the whole time. So the light is kind of like a light. And so they were like, okay, so they're like, well, okay, so you got to keep lights on. And they're like, the car has headlights, this, that, thing, and the other. So he's like, okay, so the sheriff did not like Tech at all. He kept saying, you smart nigga. And he said, I'll go run back and get the car and come, and I have the headlights and we can get out of here. He gonna say, because you think you a smart nigga, so you'll probably go and leave us. And he told Letty, you go get the car. I said, what kind of punk move was that? And he's a serviceman. And he literally said, Letty, I said, are you kidding me? And she said, you know, I used to be a track star. She's like, I'm scared, but I'll do it. Baby, so she started saying a prayer, honey. And she did that, yeah, though I walk through the shadows. I said, child. He said, what is she babbling about? She said, listen, I'm scared, but you shut up. Child, so he said, you run and don't look back. Baby, Miss Letty got to hitting it, baby. And that's why I said, listen, Journey is so perfect for this. This is right up her alley. Journey was on True Blood. And she was everything on True Blood, okay? Everything. She was part of the whole werewolf part of it, and shapeshifters. She was everything. So she's going to be the stuff in this too. And she's just so sharp, and she just fits period pieces. So anyway, go ahead, Journey. Anyhow, so she runs to go get the car. As that's going on, the Uncle George said, wait a minute. What's going on? The sheriff started turning. And he said, what do vampires do? What happens when a vampire bites you? He said, you turn. And they're telling the deputy, shoot his ass and shoot his ass now. And the deputy sit up there playing. Tick said, give me the goddamn gun. I'll shoot him. So by this time, Letty then got the car. She's being attacked by these things. And she's like, making it, and she got, the headlights on the car is running away. Child, I don't even know what they were. They like devil dogs or something. Look like something really out of very HP, but they look like something out of what's the movie? Not Silent Hill. Think of the name of the movie. Something made up. It's like the skinless dogs. What is that movie with the skinless dogs that are all messed up and they're way, way down underneath in the hive and all that? It'll come to me. But yeah, they're ugly. They're very, very ugly. They're mutated. They're very, very mutated. Not cute at all. And they got a lot going on. Like vampire stuff plus alien stuff. They got a lot going on. But this light, they don't like this light. So she drives the car through the thing, and right when, because the doggone, the sheriff ate the deputy. He killed the deputy, just tore him apart. And ended up, she blasts through. Uncle George gets knocked down and get hurt again. I said, Uncle George is getting on my nerves now. You be in the way, and you slowing things up. So they end up pulling the uncle out. And then they're like out there. It's the uncle, Letty, and Tick left only. And they killed the sheriff. And then they get out there and they're surrounded. Those things are like everywhere. There's behind them, in front of them. And then you hear this whistle. It's like this whistle thing through the woods. And they just kind of like, they go away. They went away. And then you see them, they got blood and stuff all over them from their whole little fight. They're walking out of the woods, and then they come upon, it's daytime at this point, they come upon this castle in the woods, and it's Artem. That is Artem. They've literally walked right into it. It's beautiful. It is completely beautiful. It's just sitting there. Really weird, like how it's sitting there, there's like nothing around but trees and stuff, and then you see this beautiful castle, sort of like Xavier School for the Gifted. It's just kind of in the middle of nowhere. If you don't know that it's there, you won't find it. One of them type of situations. They go up and they approach the door, and when they approach the door opens, and there's this white guy, real clean cut, and he says, oh, Mr. Freeman, we've been expecting you. Welcome home. And that's where the first episode actually ended. Weird. Weird, weird, weird. I'm here for it. Very much H.P. Lovecraft. I say that the whole segregation and the racism and all of that is a real good play for this. It's a good layer for this because it's made it very different. Like I don't know exactly what to make of it right now, but it's very interesting and it did lock me in. So I will be watching. I'll be watching. Now this racial stuff is kind of like it gets under your skin, but it's a part of the story. So I'm sure there's going to be even more of it. So just get ready. Just get ready, get ready, get ready. It is what it is. It's necessary to tell the story. That was the time. the time was like that. People were nasty. They were very nasty with it. And sometimes it feels like we're not that far out of that time, which we're supposed to be. But whatever. This is going to be very interesting. So I will be watching. This has been episode 1 of LoveCraft Country. And yeah, we're doing this. HBO. All right. Later, you guys.